Good evening. I'm Amber Conley. I'm the superintendent of the Park City School District, and we're really excited to have so many of you out tonight, even in the short snowstorm that we have. So thank you for coming out. We do have a lot of information to cover. We've had a great process as we look at expanding the high school, and we've had a tremendous team that has come together that was made up both of community members, parents, staff, and we've also had a team of high school students working with the architects in the last couple months looking at the final plans. So I'm going to introduce Joe Cronley. He's been one of our committee members, and while he's coming up, I'm going to ask that our committee members that are here to please stand up. I won't embarrass you too bad. So there's two of you. So Ann, David, Todd. If we can give them a round of applause, but they've been So thank you for the committee members that are here tonight. We've asked Joe Cronley, who's been one of the committee members, just to explain the process that we've gone through and how we've got to this point.
Thank you, Amber. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. This is what we're hoping for all along. This is the biggest turnout we've had in the three community input sessions that we've had, so really appreciate you being here and look forward to getting your feedback and input. I was just kind of looking at the process, and the first meeting we had as a committee or a team was April 21st of last year, and initially we were meeting weekly, and then it kind of turned into we had to get the VCBO on board, and we made that decision, and that kind of turned into twice a month, and then there was a time like during the summer where we met like monthly, and then it kind of ramped up again in the fall. And then starting in December, we started these community input sessions, and they've been very valuable. The team makeup, kind of like what Amber was saying, it's made up of primarily teachers, but also some administrators, and then 4 or 5 community members or parents like myself. And it's been really good as far as the continuity. Pretty much the people that started with us back in April are still with us, and we're working with the same team with a couple of exceptions. So that's been good. The process has been, from my perspective, I think, very transparent. All the meetings have been published on the Park City School District website. You've been probably hearing about them in the Park Record and on KPCW. This is kind of what we were hoping for all along, but we're good to get it at the last session, if not at all. So thanks again for being here. But let's see. No one really on the team. It would have been easy for Amber and Bob to have overextended their influence, but no one was really the loudest or talked the most. And so I think that made the team really function well, and hopefully it'll end up being showing in a good product for you guys, but you guys are the ultimate decision makers. Yeah, so this is the last of the 3 community input sessions, and then we're looking to make a recommendation to the board in the coming weeks, and then they will ultimately make the decision on what plan we go with. Like any process, I think it was a solid process, but it had some shortcomings. I think one of the shortcomings that we've gotten some feedback on is we don't have any cost figures, but there is a reason for that. Anytime we look at 4 options that now have become 6 options, if we were going to get the cost of all 6 of those, well, that's an added cost in and of itself. So the goal is to try to whittle down our 6 options to 2 for the board, get some cost estimates with those 2, and then the board will make a decision on that. And then, so we've come up with 4. That's what we initially started with the first community input session, and now it's kind of changed into, based on the input we've gotten, to 6 options, and we kind of took aspects or some of the properties of all of the different options into 2 new ones, and so now there's 3A and 4A, and that's because of the input we've gotten all along. If you haven't gone to the website, pchs-expansion.org, then we invite you to do that, because this input tonight is great, but we're still taking input via the website, and we know that if you give us input on that website, it's going to be captured, and somebody will at least read it and take that into account. The last thing I'll say is, you know, all of us know people who are fighting cancer, who have fought cancer, or people who are, serving in the armed forces and stuff. And those are life or death situations. What we're dealing with here in high school expansion is very important, as obviously you can see from this crowd. People are passionate about it and they want to have some input. But it's not a life or death thing when it comes to this. So it's okay to disagree and not like one option over another. And it's okay to disagree with other people, but let's just be polite tonight and be respectful of people who can agree to disagree. So with that, I think I'll turn some time over to VCVO, and they're going to get into the details of the options.
So I do want to introduce VCVO. We have Whitney, who's been on the team. Whitney, we have Brianna, and we have Vern, who have been the three team members. As far as process, I want to say a couple more things about process. We have tonight. We'll take all of the input from tonight. Our architects will then work with the team of refining it down to 2 options. Once we have those 2 options, we have our contractors here. We have Hughes here, and they'll put some costs to those options. Those options will be presented to our board members, and we have several board members here tonight. So if you would just raise your hand if you're a board member. We have JJ, we have Phil, we have Petra. Andrew, I know, is out of town, and I know Julie is still ill. So I want to say, when you have feedback that you want to provide, they're your board members to provide that feedback. They also, just because when we have given the 2 options and we have costs, it is within the board's decision making to ask the architects to change it and either increase one area or decrease. So know that this process isn't done as we present these 2 options. It's a fluid, ongoing process. Again, we're really excited to have you tonight, and I am going to hand it over to the team.
Excellent. So those of you in the back, feel free to come in. I promise that, I'm going to not spit at the people in the front row, and we'll be lovely. But there are lots of seats in, so if you want to come in, please feel free to do so. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the process and the work that we've done today, so you guys can see where we've been, where we are now, and then we'll also talk, as Ember just said, a little bit about some of the progress that we've even been making since we started this public outreach process. So you want to grab that next slide for me, Vern? Thanks. So the first thing is, when you start a building design, you don't dive right into the design. You start with a process called programming. And that's really where we are right now, is towards the end of the programming process. And what programming is it's sort of creating the playbook for the building. So it's identifying all of the needs and quantifying them, what they mean in terms of space and square footage, and starting to look at adjacencies. So what fits best next to what, and how does everything really work together? And a big component of the high school program is there's sort of a level of additional consideration, which is we have an existing building that we're working with. And so what you're going to see tonight is a lot of options that look at big picture adjacency questions. And that's really where we are right now, is what wants to be next to what's an important driver for the site, and what is the best way to facilitate student education within the high school. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going into the building. The big driver for this expansion is, of course, moving the 9th graders into the high school. And so that means there's a core classroom expansion needed. So those are the English and math, science classrooms, science laboratories that go with just pulling the 9th graders over. There's also growth that occurs that comes with those 9th graders now going into the career and technical education, or CTE. You'll see that a lot tonight. That's what it stands for. It's the PC caps, sort of in the career and technical education. Those students are also going to go into the music programs, performing arts, 2D arts, as well as, of course, the student commons. So some of those core building spaces are included. Thinking about those 9th grade students are likely going to not be driving, so that means they're going to be staying on campus for lunch, so that lunch area needs to expand with those 9th grade students. And then also, there's a big component in physical education and athletic spaces to accommodate that additional 9th grade class and some additional administration and counseling. Beyond that, we have an opportunity with this expansion to look at programs that have maybe grown since the original high school was built or the last renovation occurred. And so we're looking at how can we make those spaces better. A great example of that is the music space, where when the high school was built, there were 2 music programs, and right now there are 5 music programs that are operating out of the space that was meant for 2. And so as we look through these options, you're going to see growth in some existing programs to both encapsulate those 9th graders, but also hopefully improve the performance and the functionality of the current high school. So the first step in this programming process was really visioning and brainstorming. And these are just some images of some of the boards that we put together when we were doing some goal setting and trying to really understand what the programs were in the current high school and how those programs could grow. And so, you can see things like how can we provide for a good expansion path? What is the image of the building? We want to make sure the expansion reflects Park City as a community and, of course, complements the existing high school. We want to make sure that we have views and nature integrated into the building and that there's ample daylight, that sustainability is key. So we talked about a lot of the big picture vision components early on, and programming is kind of like a funnel where you start with this big vision and you start to funnel into the specific needs and the spaces. So this next slide.
One to point out here too is 21st Century Learning. One of those boards is dedicated to that, and that's an important component that we've heard as we've received feedback. So we want to make sure that we introduce 21st century ideals into the design of the facility.
And then what we did is we created from those initial discussion sessions a preliminary space spreadsheet that looked at, okay, based on our vision for the high school, what are all of the spaces that would like to be integrated into this high school? And this was the preliminary list. And we went through and we had the expansion committee prioritize for us using these colored labels. What's your first priority, your second priority, and your third priority in terms of space types? And that helped us go from that big wish list down and get closer to sort of what's required with this expansion. And we've been honing in on that program and honing in on those space needs over the last months. In fact, we even had a program meeting last Friday to even pull that in a little bit tighter. We also then had this really great exercise where we made a massive site plan of the high school site. It was actually about 7 feet by 5 feet. It was the biggest site that we've done. And we made a sort of a puzzle piece for each of those spaces that were on the program. And we asked the committee to start moving those puzzle pieces around to look at how those additional spaces could fit in with the high school. And that was really the catalyst for these 4 options that have been developed. So the 4 original options came out of this group exercise, looking at large picture sort of adjacencies within the high school. And so we just wanted to give you all a quick overview of the high school, and I don't have a pointer, I should have brought one. But just in the top left-hand corner up on the screen is the basement level. So I don't know if you all are familiar with the high school, but the far west wing has a basement level. And you can see sort of the rounded corner component. We'll refer to that as the bullet. It's a good sort of spatial recognition. So when we talk about the west wing or the bullet, we're looking at sort of that west element, and the bullet is where the media center and the photography spaces and some of the recording studios are right now. So that's the basement level. This is the main level of the high school. So again, this is the west wing with the bullet. These are what we refer to as the classroom wings, coming out here to the south. So this is where the majority of the classrooms are held right now, the general classrooms, and then we have science labs and science classrooms. This is the main entry element with the counseling offices and administrative suites on either side. And then moving north from that, you can see the Echo Center in the upper right-hand corner, and then just left of the Echo Center are the existing gymnasium areas. So those are the 2, the competition gym, the practice gym, and all of the PE support spaces. And then, go back for just a second. And then over here, you can see there's an upper level over the classroom wings where the art classrooms are, and some of those gymnasiums have some mezzanines that provide a little bit of second level space. So that's just an overview of the high school as we start moving forward. Are there any questions before we dive into the options? Okay, so this is option 1. And option 1 is looking at a couple of big moves. The first big move that was assessed with option 1 As we dove into the existing facility conditions, we found out that there are some issues with the athletics and with the gymnasiums. One is that the competition gym is too small and it's actually dangerous for players. There's not a lot of run out space. The second is the locker rooms and the support spaces don't have the capacity to serve the current student needs, let alone the growth associated with 9th grade. And so we said, what happens if we take that athletics and physical education component and we pull it out? So we have a standalone building in this option that sits over the current competition baseball field. That baseball field would be relocated on Kearns campus. And this would be a standalone physical education and athletics facility. The other big move was to say, where are we going to put the 9th graders in their core academic classrooms? And we looked at an expansion of those classroom wings to the south, so that the 9th graders don't necessarily have a wing or a separate place. They get integrated in with the rest of the students. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you, Judy?
Of course.
I think that the gym, I think if I'm correct, it's basically the gym that was built in the 70s.
It is,
When
yes.
the high school had 400 some odd students. Hasn't grown a whole lot. We've now got 1,100 students. We're going to go to 1,500 plus. It's grossly inadequate. If anyone wants to go take a look at it someday, you'd be embarrassed to have your high. If you watch the movie Hoosiers, it's like the home gym those guys play in. Not the one they go to where Gene Hackman's measuring, but the home gym.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it really needs to be replaced.
And then the other thing that we've done is we've said, you know, a lot of the West Wing is currently housing the career and technical education programs. So what if we just extended that to the north to meet their growing needs and enhance their programs? So in this option, Dozier stays in place. There could be some additional locker rooms and support spaces associated with Dozier built with the bleachers. We have the CTE expansion to the north, the classrooms to the south, and the PE facility over to the east.
And in the existing gyms, the performing arts and the
So if you go to the next slide, we just have some floor plans that illustrate these. The big thing that is consistent across all of these options is we're looking at taking this physical education facility and dropping it into the ground level. So the ground level of the gymnasiums would actually be in a basement. And what that does is it takes a really big high volume space and it pulls it down so that above grade it's about a volume and a half, rather than what you would typically have as a 2.5 story space. So it shrinks the mass of that athletic facility. So you can see the gymnasiums on the ground, or sort of on the basement level over here. And then in this option, we would keep, again, the existing, this is mechanical electrical space that needs to be maintained for building infrastructure. We would keep a portion of the west wing and then do a small addition where we would essentially remove the bullet portion and reconfigure that for CTE growth on this level.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Where would the Park City daycare be?
So thank you for that, I appreciate it. One of the conversations that we have had is there's a goal to bring the Learning Center into the high school, and that would enable the daycare to come out of the high school and go into the Learning Center building. And there are some benefits associated with that. One is the students right now from the Learning Center are doing a lot of back and forth with the high school, and the daycare needs to grow. And that would enable them to grow and have the specific site area that they need for the daycare over in the Learning Center building. Yeah, thank you for that.
Is that change consistent through all?
That change is consistent in all of the options, yes. And we're still working through exactly where the Learning Center fits within the masses. You know, we fit all of the spaces in, but we're still working through those, you know, more internal adjacencies, if that makes sense. So this is the main level of option one. And here you can see these two existing classroom wings get extended and bridged between the two. So the students sort of stay together for those core curriculum components. Again, in all of these options, the gray, it's a little bit hard to see, but the gray is existing building that stays as is. The sort of greenish color is renovation of existing spaces. And then the yellow is new construction. So you can see where the new builds are, where the renovation is, and where the existing building is in all of these options. So again, here you can see there's the larger CTE expansion. That's to accommodate the modern needs of the fabrication and wood shop, the engineering classrooms and their project spaces in combination with the existing CTE spaces. You'll notice here that the kitchen and the commons stay in place, and that the commons start to expand to the north. So where this existing south gymnasium is, would become a partial student common space. And then you can see north of that, as Vern was just mentioning, that the music program and the performing arts starts to expand into the north gym. And so we're taking those gyms and we're starting to infill them with other programs. Yes?
What's the percentage increase in square footage for art?
So we're working through that right now, but it's hard to say exactly what the percentage increase is because we're not increasing the ECHLs or the black box. So there is an increase in terms of classroom space for the arts. So the music program will grow from those 2 rooms that you can see on the northwest. They'll grow by 2 additional music rooms. The dance room is actually just relocating. So that right now the dance room is right above us, which limits the functionality of this space when the students are dancing and vice versa. So there's a little bit of a relocation with dance and a drama. And that's one of the things that we've actually been honing in on and refining. And so we're working through the sort of program adjustment of that right now. So there is a growth absolutely in the art space, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what that percentage growth is.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like.
So not, take that green and sort of divide it in half, if that makes sense. And the north half right now we're looking at for the arts expansion. And the south half would be commons and probably classroom expansion. Yes?
And where will the baseball fields go?
So the baseball fields will stay on the campus, and that's one of the things that we need to do an assessment of the optimal location for that competition baseball field. Yeah, we need to work through that still. Yes?
I can't really see from here, but the green area, is that on the left side, is that the CTE renovation?
Yes, it does.
So right now, that's currently like the world languages hallway. That would be CTE.
So that's one
Where
of
the languages go.
That's one of the exercises that we would like to make sure happens very soon, is as we're refining the classrooms, we're going through and programmatically making sure that we have the right classroom count, but the assignment of classrooms would need to be an exercise that would need to take place still. So again, I can't tell you exactly which classroom is where, but I can tell you sort of, generally speaking, we would like for CTE to be co-located. That doesn't mean there aren't potentially opportunities for others.
There won't be like enough room, or you think there'll be plenty of room?
There will be plenty of room.
Plenty, yeah.
Yeah, there will be plenty of room. It's just where exactly each classroom goes, I can't tell you right now. Any other questions? All right, we'll just keep clicking forward. So then, just really quickly, the upper level is pretty consistent with the lower level, where the classroom expansion would be the 2 levels. And we're looking at look at that, that is magical. This would actually likely be a lot of high volume space. So this says arts expansion, but likely all the art spaces on the lower level would need some high volume space, so it wouldn't be all of that square footage, but that's where it fits really nicely into the gymnasiums because they have that high volume space. And then again, this could be student commons, and then we're looking at renovating and expanding the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional art programs and potentially integrating the media center into this sort of center core area. And then here is just a quick go at what a massing might look like. These are in no way, shape, or form final or really even that developed. We just wanted to give you guys an understanding massing-wise of what these impacts look like. So again, here you can see this is the expansion of the classroom wings to the south. In this one, this is the west wing here, the CTE facility, and then you can see the athletics facility over here on the east side, and that's again something down into the ground.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning, that athletic facility is going to be pretty. I mean,
Yes.
everyone who's played Monopoly knows how to go square and round and red, and anyone who's been to the St. Regis knows they're different. This is going to be different. These guys haven't done it right yet.
How does the expansion to the classrooms affect the natural learning, current labs, science labs,
That is a very good question. This is hard to read in here, but these would actually be courtyards. Excuse me, this roof wouldn't be there. That would be yeah, we heard that early on, that courtyard, that daylight space wants to remain.
Yeah, that was one idea that we had, is potentially filling that in so that could become an indoor space inside there. Maybe an indoor garden or something that could be used in conjunction with science, but the prevailing I guess the majority of the feedback that we got was natural light was very important. We agree with that too. Natural light in those classrooms.
Yeah.
For student safety, where are they supposed to be entering into school from these different corridors?
So that's a really good question. Right now, students are sort of entering at the ends of the houses and at the main entry. And we would anticipate, again, students would still come into the building through the main entry here, but there would likely be secondary entries in at these house locations to get students into the building. And, you know, we all sort of go the path of least resistance. So one of the things that needs to be developed with the final two options is a more concrete site plan and flow. And once we figure out where the majority of the parking is, we know we need a good, strong student entry at that location, because that's how students are going to go, is they're going to go in the first door that they see. And so we need to make sure that that works well. Yeah.
Maybe it's too early. Last time we expanded the high school, there was a big issue about heating and power plant issues and things like that. Do any of the four options, have you done an analysis of the four options in that regard? And are there pros and cons that you can tell us about?
You know, that's a really good question, and we're in the middle of it right now. So we've started looking at the existing infrastructure associated with this building. And we're starting to look at opportunities for improvement of that and how the new additions would tie in, or how they might stand alone. And in this option, where we have, for example, a standalone facility over here, it might be a great opportunity for new state-of-the-art, super efficient systems for that building. But we also know that we need to accommodate these other growth components. And so we're looking at what's the best way to do that. Is it to expand the existing systems, to replace and upgrade, or how do we do that? So I don't have an answer for you, but we're looking at it.
So, but if I could,
Yeah.
we are working with our engineers around efficiencies in solar energy. So we will have information to the board, some preliminary information to the board at the meeting at the 7th, and we'll continue getting more concrete numbers by the 27th.
Yes. Yeah.
In any of these designs, how does the functionality of the teacher's classroom work? I understand that we're not to the point that you will know exactly which classroom will be where, but in regards to teachers' classrooms, have we thought about the functionality if there's enough classrooms to provide for the students as well as the teachers, or how would that look like?
So there are a couple of elements at play here, and I'll let Vern chime in at any time, but we're looking at, we know right now that you guys have a system that works really well for you, where the teachers have their classrooms and the students go to those classrooms. When Vern talked earlier about 21st century learning, one of the concepts of 21st century learning is the idea of high school starting to look a little bit more like colleges.
21st century needs, and you're going to have flexible classrooms, and you talked about teachers having office space. All of a sudden, my mind comes to a screech and think, we have a lot of teachers, where are you going to put the office space? How would that work?
So what we're exploring right now is a combination of classroom sizes. So not every class is going to be at its maximum capacity. So we have some larger classrooms, and we're looking at how can we take some of those classroom areas and break them down into potentially smaller classrooms that have a couple of faculty offices. How can we integrate faculty offices into the program in a way that makes sense and allows for that flexibility? So that's one of the current explorations that we're doing, is sort of right-sizing spaces and providing those offices for flexibility.
Right sizing increases efficiency too, as you can imagine. So not every class is going to have 25 or 30 students. So for those classes that have 15 students, they should probably be in a 600 square foot classroom. And so, anyway, it's right sizing, that way you increase efficiency in terms of doing that.
You want to?
Yep, so I'm going to do a time check.
Yeah.
We've gone through one option.
I was going to say, the rest of them are quicker. Yeah, I promise I'll keep kicking after this one question, yeah.
Would there be any consideration or opportunity with regards to the new construction with kind of a floor plate concept where if you needed to go in 5 to 10 years, you could put in new demising walls similar to an office building where your tenant improvements are specific to, you know, whatever tenancy you have at any given time.
Yes.
So that you're not ripping out bearing walls and having bigger construction costs per square foot.
You know,
Absolutely.
As a rule of thumb, when we design our schools, we do them that way. We do perimeter load-bearing walls, and the interior walls are partitions. So it's easily modifiable because we understand learning changes, schools change. I mean, you guys have seen there's been an evolution of schools over the last 4 years. And so schools go in, they do remodels, and so we understand that happens.
So I just want to run through these options really quickly so you guys can, just to give you a big picture overview, I'm going to be pretty quick. But again, the goal is once I'm done with the quick presentation, we can all go out into the comments and look at the options. And we have pro-con boards where we want to get your feedback about what's working, what's not working, what improvements could be made. And we also have some sticky notes so you can all vote for your favorite, because we want to make sure we understand the preferred.
Just real quick, I understand you're trying to move through this, but with respect to these different options and to the extent that the committee's already weighed in on maybe what the compromises or the pros and cons are, would it be possible to kind of go through the obvious pros and cons that have already been vetted by the group, so we're not kind of starting from scratch?
Absolutely, that's a great call. So option 2 has similar ones to option 1. So I'll just talk through them with option 2 and we'll
Just
see
a
that.
high level.
Yeah, absolutely. So option 2 you can see is similar to option 1 in that it has the athletic and physical education facility out in the East Field. A difference between option 2 and option 1 is we looked at what if the CTE component were a standalone facility. And then you came in and you renovated the West Wing and you put a second level over the top of the West Wing. And so this is, again, it's similar to option 1, but it's looking at a slightly different approach to where the classrooms go. So instead of the classrooms being off to the south end here, they would come in and take up 2 levels in what is currently the West Wing. So just to quickly move through these floor plans, again, we have the PE and athletic facility to the east. We have renovation of the West Wing and some existing spaces that are working well in the basement of the West Wing. We have a new standalone CTE facility on the ground level here. Again, a whole renovation of the West Wing, and then the same renovation with arts expansion here, student commons and some flexible space expansion here in the center gyms. And then on the upper floor, again, you'll see a brand new second level over the West Wing. Again, a second level of the CTE facility and the same sort of renovation component of some interior spaces on the second level. So some of the big considerations that we've talked about with both of these options is really the location of the physical education building. And one of the key elements and discussions that came up in our last committee meeting was right now there's a little bit of an issue where the PE or the athletics group are having a competition event and maybe there's a performing arts event in the Echo Center. And now all of these people are coming to the same area of the school. And that was a big discussion that we had about how you manage after-school events, Sundance, folks coming into the school and getting students in and around other activities that are happening.
The proximity of it too, that was brought up as a
Yes.
potential negative, but if there was anything that was going to be built as a satellite for the athletics could be a satellite. It made more sense than anything else.
Yeah, and we talked about how the students would get from this location to this location. And it might be through something coming sort of north and over. It might be through something coming through the sort of Eccles and up. And we talked about potentially connecting those with a physical built element, which we could do, but it's sort of an arduous path, if you will, from the students' area to the physical education building. And so I think that that was one of the big considerations with this. The other one is the CTE building is a little bit sort of back of house, if that makes sense, in this option. And the students again have to go outside, and how would they get in and out of that CTE facility? So that was a discussion that we had. Some of the benefits of this are having 2 standalone buildings gives you an opportunity for 2 state-of-the-art standalone, very efficient facilities that you can design with great energy performance, which is nice. And it also, you can build both of these facilities without impacting the existing students. So constructability, you can build these 2 new buildings without impacting the existing students. So there are definitely some pros associated with them, as well as some cons. And so let's just,
Really quick.
yeah.
It looks like option 2 doesn't change the parking in the front.
Correct.
How many spots are lost in the other options? Can you go through that?
So we don't have a firm count on the parking, but essentially what happens with option 1 is the building gets built over the bus drop-off here and this first row of parking. So you would lose this first row of parking and the bus drop-off, and the bus drop-off would have to then be shifted. And we know that that's a new bus drop-off, and that's a consideration. So it gets shifted to the south. So essentially what you would lose is about 2 rows of parking over here. on this south parking lot. But there are some opportunities, depending on how these options play out, to look at some other parking associated with the athletics facility or potentially some parking associated with the CTE facility. And that's what, as we get down to the two preferred options, we'll refine those site plans and get firmer counts on parking pros and cons.
Is the goal to keep the parking neutral?
So we actually have a group of students studying parking right now. We would love to keep the parking neutral. We know that with the influx of the ninth grade, they would likely not be driving, but they will be carpooling or being dropped off, and there will be impacts associated with that. So we have a group of the engineering students. We've just met with them today, and they're going to be doing parking analysis, traffic analysis, as well as coming up with options and solutions to reduce single occupant vehicle drivership to the school in an attempt to not have to grow the parking. And so we're excited to hear what they come up with and see if that's something that could be feasible. We would love it if it's feasible. And so then here is the option 3. Do we have a site plan for option 3? Let's go back one. So option 3 is getting the big move here is the PE and athletic facility moves and attaches. So where the West Wing was, the West Wing goes away, and the PE athletic facility comes in. In this option, we were looking at a classroom expansion to the north here, and then a standalone CTE facility out in this baseball field area. Yeah.
Is it true that this option would move Dozier Field to the left?
Yes, maybe. So that it's a good question. So in this particular diagram, yes, Dozier would have to shift.
So we would pay the money to move Dozier, but we'd only be moving it 10 feet or something.
We would be moving it about 40 plus feet, but there could be some benefits in terms of existing infrastructure that we could still take advantage of, but there would be costs. So what we're looking at right now, based on feedback that we've heard from you all, is can we change the footprint of this building so that we don't have to move Dozier Field? And that's an exploration that's currently in process at our office, because we'd like to keep, one of the benefits of this plan is that the PE facility is directly adjacent to the track and field. So you don't have to replicate locker rooms, you don't have to replicate some of those support spaces, everybody's right where they want to be, but, you know, how can we slim this down a little bit so that we don't have to shift Dozier Field? And that's something we're currently exploring in our office.
Whitney?
Yes.
Dozier Field has surpassed its life expectancy. That field is due to be replaced anyways.
Correct. So that is absolutely true. The turf on the field needs to be replaced. But so there would be additional cost of resurfacing the track essentially associated with that. But yes, that's a very, very valid point. So we'll just quickly, again, go through these floor plans. Again, you can see in the basement here that there's the athletic PE facility. And, you know, Dozier Field right now, the edge of the track is about right here. So we're seeing if we can shift some of these rooms north and south and reorient them to keep Dozier. We're in that exploration process. And then, of course, we would keep the existing basement and the utility infrastructure area.
And I'm sorry, in this, these options, is the elevation maintained with this being sunk down as well, or is it total elevation?
For the athletic facilities? Yeah, the athletic facility is sunk down in the basement, yeah, so it's still a reduced mass. And so what would happen is you would come out to Dozier Field from an upper level in this case. So again, here's the upper level of the PE and athletics facility. Here would be the classroom expansion component would come up to the north. Similar commons and flexible space, classroom space expansion here. Arts expansion in the north gym. And then the CTE building in this option is off to the east. And then the upper level is similar. So again, this is the roof of the PE facility, the classroom expansion, commons, art sort of expansion, and then over here to the east we have the CTE building, the upper level of that. And this is what that massing might look or feel like. And so by slimming up this building, we're hoping to sort of pull some of these spaces around potentially and tuck them in on the north and south. And so we're going through those explorations now. But there is an impact you can see on the west side of the parking here, and that's another element that we have to consider in this option. Yeah.
And if we end up with a field house that goes with the master rec plan that's recommended to city and county, that would not be big enough space, right?
No, so what we're really doing is we're meeting the needs of the high school.
Right, we're meeting the needs of the high school.
Yes, yeah, the other thing that we're trying to do in all of these options is be able to sort of break this space off of the high school for after-school programs to make it a little bit safer for all of the students and visitors, because right now, when you have an athletic program in this building, the whole building is open to you. And so we're hoping to sort of break those apart and make that function better for both the students and the community for after-school programs. So again, here, the CTE building off to the east, and then was the classroom expansion here.
Now, a pro to this option, a definite pro that came out of the committee meetings and also out of the community meetings, is you now have taken two different event pieces in the school, the auditorium and the gymnasium, and put them on different sites of the campus. So nighttime events could utilize the east parking lot for Eccles, and nighttime events for the gymnasium could utilize the west parking lot.
Not really. I mean, the parking lot's really small, so if you have a basketball game there.
There would still likely be some overflow here, but there would be an opportunity to, depending on the needs, potentially expand that parking and still divvy up a little bit of sort of the student community use. Yeah.
Not to mention, we also maintain the lot over by the LDS Steakhouse as well.
Yes, so for Dozier events, some of those could come in from that other side.
What about the natural light now for the classrooms? There doesn't look to be very much natural light and everything else in the new classroom expansion. It doesn't look very inviting.
So this was one of the things that we were, densifying those classrooms to get them to fit. And it's great feedback, and we heard that, and we're going to show you guys option 3A, because after meeting with our first public group, they came up with what we're calling an option 3A, and after our second public meeting, we came up with an option 4A.
And it gets better.
And they all keep getting better, which is why we're so glad that you guys are here. So really quickly, I'm going to go through option 4. So option 4 is the only option that moves Dozier Field from the west side of the school to the east side moves over to the east on Kearns campus. So in this option, Dozier Field is gone, and essentially what we do is we say this is the existing high school. In this option 4, we demolished the west wing, and we built a new CTE and classroom expansion here, and then did the new PE and athletic facility to the far west. And as we wanted to really explore the pros and cons of moving Dozier Field, what are the benefits? And to us, the benefit in this option of moving Dozier Field, and what's better explained in option 4A. So what we talked about at the last community meeting was option 4A, which would be keeping the west wing fully intact and building west of the west wing and north of the west wing. And what that enables you to do is that enables you to build your entire expansion without impacting the students while they're in school, right? So that's the benefit of moving Dozier Field, is during construction it has a reduced impact on the students. But after it's constructed, one of the things that we noticed is this is still a pretty long corridor to get students to and from the different areas of the school. And then this PE and athletic facility is still removed from wherever Dozier Field goes. So students are still going to have to travel distances between those particular facilities. So just really quickly on the floor plans here, again, the basement, PE and athletic facility on the west side here. The main level, you can see the PE and athletics facility, the new classroom and CTE expansion. If we kept the west wing, this is essentially the footprint of the west wing, so that would be blue or gray, and then the rest of this would be yellow for option 4A. And then again, eventually we would come back in and renovate and infill those existing gymnasiums with other school programs. And then here is the upper level, again, CTE programs. Oh, you can go to the rendering, I think that's okay. So again, here's the athletic and PE building, the classroom expansion in CTE, and then the existing high school. So that was really the benefit of moving Dozier, is that opportunity that comes out.
Well, where's Dozier Field?
So that's something that if this is the selected option, we will tell you where Dozier Field is. We'll find the location for it.
Right now,
we wanted to hear back from you all first.
We're looking at the field in between the district office and Treasure Mountain as a potential location for Dozier. And so we've got to do a final location if this is the scheme that we're going to move forward with. But anyway, that's under study.
Yeah.
Treasure Mountain, what happens to that?
So Treasure Mountain was eventually slated to be removed from the campus. So it would get demolished and that site would become available for future growth opportunities or potentially the build area. But it's a little bit of a phasing and staging. And that's where we need to explore the final location of Dozier Field and make sure that it works time-wise with other plans on the campus. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're considering impacts to the neighborhood?
Yes.
You see it in every single one of these potential parking.
Do you want to go to option 3A for me? So I think that in option 3A, we tried to minimize that. So we heard from the community at our first public outreach event that folks were very concerned about traffic along Lucky John. And originally we had shown parking with access coming off of Lucky John here. And right now there's a sort of a loop road that exists on the north side of the building that's a sort of a service access. And so that is, we're still looking at how that plays out. But what we heard from that first community outreach group is it's really important to minimize the impact of Lucky John and not bring more cars there if we can avoid it. And so we're really trying diligently to do that and also to reduce the building masses. The one thing is you guys have the tallest portion of the building right up against Lucky John. So nothing we do would be, we would be substantially lower than the Eccles in terms of mass and scale. And we're looking at parking configurations to try to minimize that impact. So option 3A came about when they said, well, we don't like the standalone CTE building. Can we bring CTE back in and maybe look at, instead of having this big classroom wing that came out on option 3, look at the classroom expansion component that came from option 1 and tie that with the CTE and PE and athletic facility renovation. And so that, or infill. So this is really option 3A that came out of our first public input. And some of the pros about this are everything is really consolidated. So if you're in the student commons, you can get to any point of the building pretty darn quickly. So this is the most compact of the options, I think, in terms of student access between point A and point B during the course of the day. It still provides you the benefit of separating the PE facility from the Eccles Center, but it further impacts your parking on the south side of the building, because now we're impeding on the parking from the south and from the west. And so we could potentially grow parking over here that could work fine for the students on the day-to-day. It doesn't necessarily help with those big events. But again, as Joe mentioned, there's still some parking available over here with the church. It's a shared parking lot. So again, all of these options have pros and cons. We unfortunately don't have a perfect option because we're working within the constraints of the school and the site. And so that's really what we want to learn from you all today. What's the best option in your mind and why? What are the pros and what are the cons and what do we really need to pay attention to? So what I'd like to suggest that we do right now is actually just break up and go out and talk about the options. So we actually didn't draw 4A because 4A was just keeping the west wing of 4. So if we can go back to the... So really what 4A is, right here, this would be the existing west wing. And everything else would stay the same in the expansion. So it would just minimize even further the impact on the students during construction. Yes?
As far as the child care center, we're excited to hear that a plan has been mentioned, but just a couple of things to consider. The child care center has been at the high school for 20 plus years, and the relationships that have been built between the little kids and the high school kids is amazing, particularly with the special education classroom next door and life skills. The other thing to possibly consider is putting it with the CTE facility as part of that hands-on experience for teacher.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the sequencing on almost any of these, especially option 4 or 3A, with really shifting?
Do you want to come up? I was going to say, so these, with the exception of 4A, really, there's going to be a complicated sort of sequencing effort that's going to occur.
Yeah, so we've kind of looked at it kind of in a general area, kind of very general, and we look at building your new spaces first, the kind of getting the, wherever the ninth graders, whatever classrooms need to be kind of built to accommodate them. That's kind of be our first focus. And then kind of an athletic type facility would kind of be our second focus. And then that would, vacate the gym spaces, and then we would go in and kind of start the remodel. It's kind of how we would, just kind of grand scheme kind of phasing.
And so, as you guys know, because this just occurred, what did we decide, about 10, 12 years ago with the expansion, there are going to likely be impacts to students with all of the options with the exception of 4A. And so those impacts vary, but it's always our goal to reduce the impacts. And what we want to do is we want to balance the student impacts during construction with the outcome of the building at the end of the day, because this building is going to serve the community for a very long time. And so the couple of things that we really wanted to look at in this exercise were what are the really key adjacencies and how can we make sure the students have the best learning environment possible. And then we'll work very closely with the general contractor and with the school district to make sure that we minimize the impact on the students during construction.
Is there an option that is preferred by the staff, the people that are actually going to work and live in these spaces?
So we have a number of staff on our expansion committee, and their preference, they have two preferences. Their preferences are generally the option 3A because of the co-location of everything within the school, or option 4, and option 4 is because it really doesn't impact the students during construction as much. And so those are some of the conversations that we had and why those are the preferences. Yeah.
To clarify, for all the schemes, is the program set aside for all schemes?
Yes.
So in other words, generally we're talking about the same amount of square footage, whether it's remodeled or new.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Whitney, one thing that we do want to add, Amber reminded me about this, we've had 3 different focus groups with teachers and students beyond our normal expansion committee meetings. And that gave us a great chance, literally for half a day on each visit, we were able to sit with the teachers, get their feedback on each of these individual schemes. So it's great getting that feedback because we need that so we can make these schemes better.
Yeah.
If there is a plan, if I heard it correctly, to do this as a staged construction so you can shift from one area to another area, on the Park City website, it projected that this building will take about a year. Do you think if this is a staged construction that a year is a realistic time?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I'm just in Amber's position.
That could be the first phase, right? So, for example, getting the 9th grade students into classrooms within the facility could be.
Yeah, this, in the plan right now, this could be definitely done within a year, this addition on the south end. That gets the 9th grade students in the building, and then the remainder of the spaces could be worked on after that in the next phase. But yeah, it would be extended beyond a year.
Oh, okay,
So the very first part where you were determining which things you were expanding at, is it administrative or office space?
Yeah.
And is that?
There's a very small piece, and that would likely be where we had that sort of commons expansion area in the gymnasium until we're looking at opportunities on either a main or a second level to do sort of a secondary satellite, potentially administrative suite. That location again hasn't been fixed. We're looking at a couple of options.
We worked with Bob in that.
Yeah.
We did determine we probably need another assistant principal. We probably need another counselor. So yeah, there's definitely administrative needs for sure.
So I think I understood his question. Regardless of the configuration of the square footage of the CTE and the other that would be the same.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Through all of the options.
Yeah, sorry, that's right. So the master plan for the campus, there's a demolishment, there's a treasure there. So if you take, in this case, move grade 9 up here, that leaves an opportunity for eliminating treasure at that point. So then how would that shift some of the planning either for the athletic fields or Dozier down there or realignment of the basement? I mean, is that part of the sequencing at this point?
Yes. So depending on the selected option, whichever element needs to be relocated, whether it's Dozier or the baseball field or whatever, we would look at how and when that needs to be relocated, what site areas are available, and how that plays in with the treasure relocation. Yeah. Yeah.
So I know you said you don't have cost estimates, but is it safe to assume that these all have relatively the same costs, or are there some options that are a lot more expensive than other options?
So there are options that would be more expensive than other options, and the big reasons for that would be, of course, moving Dozier Field, picking it up and totally relocating it in all of its support spaces would have cost to it. New construction is, of course, more expensive than renovation. And so in places where we're, like, for example, demolishing the whole west wing and replacing it with new construction, there are some cost deltas in there. And as Joe mentioned earlier, we're hoping to refine these options down and put costs to those, to the final two options for the board so that they can understand what those cost implications are as well. Yeah.
To be fiscally prudent, in this example, the 9th grade classrooms, would that fall in the category probably of 18 or 19 million or less? So that if this program in June and then on didn't pass again, we could afford to do the classrooms and just nothing else and hold on past.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're working through those specific cost
I mean,
estimates right
the
now.
current square footage that they've outlined right now would suggest that, yeah.
Yeah.
If you put this 3A with future parking that you have over here, I mean, does that leave room for future expansion, or is that a possibility, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that there are two things to consider for future expansion, and we've heard this in a couple of our community meetings, is it's good to think about what happens. One is that parking is really flexible. And so if we build parking now, that doesn't mean that we couldn't put building there in the future and relocate that parking. So parking actually is often planned as an expansion path for future expansion, so you could expand to the east. The other option, depending on where the district goes in the unknown future, is we have a lot of other site area on Kearns in both playfields and other facilities that might be underutilized in the future. And so there are opportunities, I think, in all of these options for some growth and expansion on the campus.
Quickly, Treasure is being demolished because it's no longer.
Yeah, there are a couple of issues with Treasure Mountain. One is safety of the facility, age, and the cost to upgrade it. And then the other is sort of district realignment goals that are concurrently happening.
I was just thinking because there's an elementary school here that is positioned between next to high school. So Treasure can't choose between the elementary school, which is outgrowing itself.
There could be some site area that could be assessed for another elementary school, but that's outside of the scope of our
school to expand where the elementary school.
Yeah, that's outside of our scope of work right now, but that is absolutely a possibility in the future.
In terms of moving Dozier Field, one of the options very obviously completely moved it.
Yeah.
But I believe option 3, and what I want is as expensive as moving it all the way.
It's not.
It's not.
It's
okay.
not as expensive as a whole move. And as I mentioned earlier, we're working to see if we can redesign
Okay.
that physical education facility so that we don't have to move it with
Okay.
those options, understanding that we'd like to not have those costs incurred on the project.
But there is still some costs because there was also a Dozier's needs to be
No matter what, Dozier needs to be returfed. The turf
Okay.
needs to be replaced, and that cost will be incurred whether it stays in place or moves. Yeah.
Along those lines, in this one, could you I know what you said, one of the pros is having that CTE attached, but could you remove it over there on the east side and then narrow the?
And that's what we're working at. So the meeting that I mentioned that we just had to sort of further refine that program, I think we were able to reallocate some spaces and maybe move some things out of that CTE, shrink it, and pull athletics up and reorganize. So we're working through that. This is like a constant sort of refinement process.
With the athletic facility, can you talk about what is slated to go in there, specifically how many courts or gyms that you're putting in?
So the plan for the athletic facility right now has one full competition gymnasium with bleachers coming down onto it. And I don't know, Vern, it's going to be hard to see, and you're welcome to take a look at the plans that are outside. Here we have a competition gym, and you can see some bleachers on the side. Another refinement that we're working on right now, originally we had 2 practice gyms to the north of it. So when this competition gym isn't being used and these bleachers are pulled back, there are actually 2 courts that can happen over the top of it. So to further refine this space, we're looking at taking this competition gym and essentially mirroring it up here. That enables us to cut a couple thousand square feet out of the gymnasium, and it still gives you 4 practice areas for PE during the day, which is really important for their daily operations. Yeah.
When you look at this highway every day about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and seriously, I work for a company here, we have 90 employees, and they hate working in this town. Have you been coordinating with UDOT about the traffic, adding another 500 students to the school? No, in a serious way.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joe, do you want to respond to that?
The students are already here. They're just going to Treasure Mountain. So there's really no net change in student population except for the inflationary growth that happens.
So it's the same students are going to a different area of the campus. You know, they're just going down the street from where they currently are.
Are you coordinating all the traffic with UDOT? How does UDOT feel about the change?
So we have to work directly with the city and the county with our roads, and then they're basically our liaisons with UDOT. And so if you recall, in the first proposal we had with our initial bond, there was an idea to put a traffic pattern with basically a bus lane going straight through our property. So we have and are continuing to work with them, running the reports of peak times and seasons. And as you know, the traffic has increased even since last year. So it is definitely a concern that we live and breathe every day.
Well, you know, it's really a much larger issue than just the little conversation we're having, because the city and the state have spent millions of dollars over the last 20 years studying it, and they've just never done anything about it.
They asked us to use our property to try to fix it.
And I think, you know, the parking would be really simply handled if more of the students were required to ride the bus.
Or carpool.
And because I hear all these conversations about we need to adjust the parking. You know, as far as the city's concerned, they would prefer that no one drives into town at all, and everybody would ride the bus. And I think maybe with the high school planning on changing, maybe there should be more emphasis on the students not driving. Less students driving. What do you think, Bob?
Between the parents and the job.
So maybe I could add to that. We met with the students today. They are looking at every possible option as they move forward with this study. One of them we talked about, what do they call that, a park and wait?
Park and ride.
Like a park, just like they have at the airport. You basically park out at Quinn's Junction, a little parking lot, wait till your kid's out on the curb, then you get a call or a text, you go get them. So that's a way to minimize or reduce that traffic flow. We need a lot of that though, you know, we need to improve it and make it maximum.
I mean, the students are also talking about working with Park City Transit to say, are there key locations where we could have a park and ride and have a bus waiting to bring the students into the school? How can we keep students on campus instead of having them go out to lunch in the middle of the day? How can we minimize single occupant vehicle ridership? So there are a lot of things that the students are going to study, and we feel like the most effective single occupant vehicle demand management has to come from sort of programs in the school to really get the students to do it. So we're excited that they're excited about it. I saw a cluster from back here. Yeah.
Hi. So this is exciting. What happened to 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th? Where did they fall off the end of the year?
So I'll speak on that briefly because this is really
I understand.
Yeah.
I just haven't heard anything about it.
Yes, so I can talk a little bit about that. So at our next board meeting on February 7th, the board will be discussing at length again grade realignment and how to accomplish grade realignment, because that was voted on 2 years ago, April of 2015. And so now it does get into the facilities around what are we going to continue to do. I want to share 2 key things quickly, and that is our elementary schools, because of our belief in early childhood with both our preschool and all-day K, as well as the impact that we've had with our special programs that have been extremely successful around STEM, music, art. All of those things have increased the space needs in our classroom. The other thing that has impacted that is the belief of small class sizes. So when you have a class size of 20, we have increased the number of classrooms that we need to be able to accomplish that. And we're seeing great gains, of course, in our learning environments. So the board will be talking about that at length with lots of information that they're going to have to digest. Any decision that could be made would not be made until the February 27th board meeting. There are options that we've been looking at administratively to see what the options are for grade realignment sooner rather than later. But again, that's a discussion at the board. And I really encourage, those are videos, minutes are taken, and so to please either attend or watch those and then contact your board members around ideas.
I have two suggestions. One is to get rid of the light in front of the high school.
The traffic signal?
Yeah, and either, no, the crossing light for the students. Either put in a tunnel or a bridge so that it doesn't hold up the traffic every single morning as the students are going across. Put in a tunnel.
The city has a plan to do that in 2019.
Okay, the other one is, you go to field to my backyard, I am going to slow this down, and I think a lot of people are parking in those fields. So try not to move Dozier Field.
Okay. That's very helpful feedback. Why don't, are you guys interested in going and giving us feedback on all of the options? So I don't want to keep you here for too long. No? Any questions? Okay.
Well, I was just going to point one thing. You brought up that gymnasium thing, and this is true for all 4 options. Right now, if we bring in the 8th grade or the 9th grade into the high school, you don't have a facility to have like a school assembly and have everybody, including the faculty in there. In all 4 options, this facility would accommodate for that. So 2,000, 2,200, including the faculty, would have an assembly of some kind. Right now, we're not all able to fit in the Echo Center if we bring in the 9th grade as it is.
Plus, it's being designed as a large indoor event space as well. So with those gyms open to each other like they are, you could do graduation in there if it was bad weather. So it would be a large space.
Yeah.
So the relocation of the field does seem to make a lot of sense. But if it's going to be a remote athletic facility, part of that must include its own lockers.
It does, and that's part of the additional cost of that relocation. And honestly, where we have the 2 options, option 1 and 2, where the athletic and PE building are, you'll notice there's a blue block next to Dozier, which is football and track storage and locker facilities. And that would have to be built with Dozier as an improvement on option 1 and 2. And option 4, where we relocate Dozier, not only are we relocating Dozier, but we're also building those support spaces. Yes?
So you're looking at approximately 1,700 students now, is that correct? And what's the maximum capacity of the new building?
2,000. It was discussed that beyond 2,000, the culture of the school changes, and there would likely want to be a change in the district and an addition of additional high school facilities.
But maybe just to clarify, that 2,000 is based on 25 kids per classroom. So, I mean, once you hit the 2,000 mark, start planning what you're going to do 10 years from now. That you can easily get 2,300 kids to the building. That's not a problem. You just to go to 25 or 30 kids a classroom.
Yeah, from that standpoint, it's, I'm trying to get an idea of what the impact is in terms of crowding.
Yeah.
Like for the option where everything is consolidated, that's an advantage, right? But when a bell rings and your 23 kids, 100 kids are moving in one building, if you guys have a sort of a guideline, at that point it might be okay or it might be better for those buildings to actually be spread out. What is that? What do you guys?
It's really an adjacency and a preference. No matter what, we're going to design the corridors and the exit ways and the pathways to facilitate the movement of the students that are in them. You'll notice in the options where we expand to the south, we're actually adding an additional bridge between the 2 classroom houses on both levels to facilitate improved movement through the school. And so it's really making sure that the kids have the right pathways to move to the places they need to without what we would call bottlenecks, right? Making sure that they're moving effectively, and we'll look at corridor widths, doorways, and paths of travel to make sure we avoid those in all of the options. All right, let's go break out. Come on.
Do you have plans to expand